This is the
Bhangra Podcast.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Bhangra Podcast. And today, Sid is going to be interviewing the judges from Down South Bhangra 2022, Jagga, Sharnie, and me. Also, thank y'all so much for the love on the blowout video episode. Seemed that y'all really like the video format, and I'm going to do my best to keep making those. So for this episode, I'm going to post a longer, less edited version of this conversation here on this podcast feed. But I'm going to upload a shorter highlight version of the episode on YouTube sometime soon after this podcast release. So if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube, and link to that will be in the description. Also, I'm thinking about doing some live streams where I get on a call with teams and critique their videos so that not only the team I'm critiquing can learn, but also everybody else watching can learn from their mistakes as well. If you're interested in having your team critique during a live stream, there's a Google form in the description, so fill that out to get in line. Other than that, let's get into it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bhangra Podcast. This is Sid, and I am your host today for our podcast with the judges of DSB. And we have with us our judges. Go ahead and popcorn yourselves and introduce yourselves.
Hi guys, I'm Jagga. Sharnie.
Hi, I'm Sharnie from ASD Bhangra, Popcorn and Umer.
And my name is Umer. I'm from FCB and this podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for those wonderful introductions. So today we are going to delve into what happened at DSB. So to recap the placings, first was Forge with 87.17. Second was Alamo with 86.33. Third was Michigan with 76.83. And then fourth was Virginia Tech, 75.33. So we definitely see a jump from 2 to 3, a 10-point spread, pretty large. So obviously the top two teams were a big jump ahead of the rest of the pack, and we will get into that later. So first things first, we'll jump into what the rubric was and what the point totals are, and let's jump into it. So first section is set design, and Jagga, you want to take it away?
Yeah, set design. So it was tied up with choreography and creativity, with that being 15 points. And then the next section was the difficulty of choreo, with being 10 points. Formations, creativity and design, 10 points, and cohesion was 10 points. The set design heavily weighted creativity in this rubric.
Yeah, so execution, 40 points overall, with form, 10 points, energy and Nakara, 10 points, team sync, 10, and formations, 10. One thing I did want to just bring everybody's attention to, because it will play a fairly decent amount when we're talking about energy and Nakara later on, and different placings. So I'm going to read through this entire thing. Did the team have consistent energy throughout the performance? Did the team control their energy when necessary? Did the team display mature Nakara and Josh? Was the team having fun? Did they display chemistry through interactions and body language? Did each dancer bring mature Nakara, Josh, and energy to their performance, and were the dancers engaging to watch?
I think the biggest thing to keep in mind moving forward when we're talking about it is that those two were in the same section with a total of 10 points.
Yep.
And Sharnie.
So the last 20 we have for impact. So we have 5 points going to the intro and the outro of the set, another 5 points for the music and mix. And that just encompasses, was there a good balance of songs, effects, were songs easily transitioned into each other. And then that last section for the overall impression was 10 points, also labeled overall impression.
Awesome. So let's get into the one thing that I just want to make sure we highlight is the fact that choreography and creativity, I should say, and formational creativity and design are the most heavily weighted sections of this rubric in the set design. It's under that block of set design, 50 points, but those are the two heavily weighted at 15 each. Most of them are at 10, and just intro, outro, and mix are at 5. So that was just but I would thank you guys for that. So let's jump into talking about placings. So first one I want to get into is the third place debate between Michigan Boiler and Virginia Tech and how you guys came to your conclusion. And so, first things first, were you guys talking about all three? And there was a potential for the fifth place team to move all the way up to third. Yeah. Okay. Cool. You don't see that a lot, and that's interesting. First thing I want to ask is, did Boiler truly have a shot as the fifth place team, or was that kind of a quick conversation? Did it move on to Virginia Tech versus MBT pretty quickly, or was Boiler really in it?
I would say that Boiler kind of dropped out fairly quickly, but we did want to make sure that we covered them, because in terms of spirit of the rubric and set design stuff, they had really cool ideas. During their For Money segment, they had
Fulgaris.
There it is. That's up. They had Fulgari class, and they were doing Fulmania with while holding the Fulgari class and holding in between. They had these really cool mechanisms, formations with them. Super fascinating stuff. During the Kunde segment, they did a rail gadi rail gimmick, and they were holding the Kunde kind of it was a train. They had these really cool ideas, and so that's where their formations and their choreography, creativity. That's where they got their bump. But I like you said, it was a quick okay, are we sure we want to make sure that we consider everybody that's kind of in the running, but we all kind of very agreed for the execution wasn't there, the energy wasn't there, and it's just it's hard to give that team a third placing when some of the basics of dancing weren't there.
Yeah. Speaking of energy, on Boiler, it was very apparent that you can see the energy dipped towards the second half, especially going into the ending. It was completely down, and then all of a sudden towards the ending they picked it back up. I had it in my notes as well, and when I spoke to them directly, I gave them that feedback as well. So my overall comments were they definitely need to work on energy and synchronization within the team. And I think one point to cover was that in the beginning, I did call somebody out for this, but in the beginning, the person did forget the share right at the beginning. So that was one thing also.
Yeah, definitely just going off.
Got it. Cool. So moving on to the debate between Virginia Tech and Michigan. I'm looking through the points here, and in the first 50 points, Michigan looks to be slightly ahead in almost every section except for actually difficulty. Difficulty Michigan's slightly lower. And then in the sections for execution, Virginia Tech is slightly ahead in everything except for energy and Nakra. And so kind of, overall impression, they're the same. So if you guys want to start delving into, so basically what that means is that it was tight. So what was the conversation between Michigan and Virginia Tech?
So I'll dive into Virginia Tech. They started off. I think all three of us were counting when they started off. They had about, I think, 24 dancers on stage when they started, and they started with the Mela scene, and it looked nice. Because it was different than everybody else, but at the same time, they kind of hid some dancers during that part. There were dancers that were slacking, and you could literally tell the difference between the dancers. So that kind of
I can speak on MBT a little bit. So I believe I had them up by a point, maybe a little bit over than a point. But yeah, I think when just comparing them, MBT did slightly more creative things in their set with a purpose. So for example, there are certain things that I remember in the set, one of the segments, the song that was playing, that specific phrase literally translated to the circle gets smaller, and that's exactly what they did with their formation, right? So it was something that I was easily...
Yeah, the song was Circle
Exactly,
Shorta Ho Gaya. Yeah.
So the circle literally got smaller. And I could tell what was happening right away. They did something a little bit around that area as well, something in Umer, I believe it was, with a phone little gimmick, and they did a little phone thing, which was really cute, just right in there really quickly. It wasn't anything that was too long and kind of drawn out. But you could definitely tell with MBT that they had more creative aspects, and everything that they did had a purpose. And one thing I actually really liked with them was, and I appreciate this with most sets that do this, but when we're doing drop off or pickup and stuff like that, MBT did a really cool job of having half of the dancers drop off their subs while the other half are still dancing with subs. The half that did drop off subs immediately picked up kunde, and they were kind of dancing with kunde and subs both on stage. It was a very seamless transition, and then the other half dropped off, picked up kunde, and then right away the kunde segment started. So it was a very seamless transition. There wasn't a lot of time wasted where all 12 dancers are going either to the back or the front, and you kind of just have like a couple counts where nothing's really happening. So it's just like little things like that, and even in transitions, I think that really matters in a set and its fluidity.
Yeah, I think generally the like if I'm gonna go through my scores real quick, hold on. So the end of the day, I think the reason that MBT won out over VTech was creativity. They had like their drummer choreography was a bit more just that tiny bit touch more creative. The formations, like they said, the circle got smaller, and like there was like little things like that. And VTech, like a lot of their choreography and their formations really fell flat. I mean, like choreography and like formational creativity was not the strong suit when like I'm going to compare them to to Blowout. I did not, speak clear, did not compare them to Blowout when I was judging, but just so listeners can kind of understand, like, when VTech did really well at Blowout, they did well because like their synchronization, their form, their energy, like all that stuff was really on point. And one thing that VTech was not really on point at this competition was energy sync and formational execution, things like that. They had like they were generally overall very much weaker dancers at this competition. They weren't hitting everything, especially at the end. For intro outro, like I really liked Jagga didn't really like their intro so much. I really liked it. I thought it was a really interesting take on a mela. Like normally mela, like a lot of teams have these like mela scenes, kind of like it's like CMU 2016-esque mela scenes where everybody's like doing their little thing and there's a share going on. But they had like this full fleshed out, like lived in scene that was really, really interesting where everybody's doing something. I really liked that. But their outro, like you're going live. If you're going to do a live segment, like I need energy, I need shoulders, I need facial expressions, I need like overall Josh to be at like 110%, and it fell extremely flat in compare. So like that's why like a lot like it wasn't the best taste at the end of the set. Some other things that just kind of hit on as going on. MBT, like you'll see this, like MBT had a lot of like not MBT dancers. Like there were a few RVD, a few for delay and Suyota, and it was very apparent. Formation choreography was missed. Formations were missed. Like there was just like clear, like there are like 5 different teams on this one team right now. They approach dancing very differently. Like you could see throughout the performance that the dancer discrepancy was crazy. Like in Umer specifically, there was like 3 different teams being represented in the front with the 4 dancers, and like you could tell, like, oh, he's hitting it, he's hitting it, he's hitting it. They have not practiced together a lot, and so they got a hit on like formational execution, team sync, and things like that. But at the end of the day, like you said, Sid, like this rubric valued creative formations and creative choreography, and that is where they beat. And that is where MBT beat VTech, and that is why ultimately, like they edged them out by 1 point. I think everybody had MBT or VTech like 1.5 points. Yeah, like something like that. And so it was a long conversation. Actually, so interesting thing that we did at this competition was we recorded deliberations. Then after we had done deliberations and placings were announced, we sent the audio recording to all the teams, and like you can tell, like half that deliberations is just like us going back and forth over MBT. Like, can we like argue for VT going over MBT, and that ultimately
Yeah.
Just making point. It's not that I didn't like their Mela segment. I liked it. It was something that we didn't see in the other teams, right? Mela segment was being done in the beginning, so I liked the idea, but at the same time, it was 24 dancers, it should have been like 24 dancers dancing at the same level. What I saw was 24 dancers, but some of them just not trying. It's like you're beginning your opening part of your set and you're not trying at all. So that's kind of where it brought it down for me. And then towards the ending, like Umer said, they did a live ending. So they ended like with music and then they started doing a live ending. But that live ending wasn't well executed. It wasn't with energy.
Also, about the live ending, they took like a really weirdly long break between like when they finished. It was like 15 seconds or like it was just kind of like, yeah, good job. I thought they were over. I was like, oh, I guess they're not doing it this time. And then they're just and then they started playing. I was like, oh, I guess we're doing this.
Awesome. That was honestly, I very much enjoyed that discussion. I'm being serious. Like I think the judges too often get too much heat and just not understanding how much thought gets put into this stuff. You know, to hear it fully. Like Jagga, we never got to know this stuff back in the day. Like, yeah, like this never happened. Being able to listen to a judge truly dissect something. So a listener question out of left field here was giving MBT third a coming out of retirement present for Aran.
Yes, 100%.
Congratulations, Aran. Happy to hear he's back on stage. But yeah, so moving on here to the first place debate between Alamo and Fudge. To do a quick recap of the points, Fudge is at 87.17. Alamo is 86.33. So we're talking less than a point difference in terms of the averages. Sharnie had Fudge 91.5, Alamo at 88.5. It's a 3-point spread. Jagga has Alamo at 89 and Fudge 86. And Umer has Fudge 84 and Alamo at 81.5. And there were some deductions for Fudge, I think 1.3 or something like that, for improper handling of Vardi. So I kind of want to just open the floor here and have you guys kind of recap both routines. Like before you get into the debate, right? If you guys could kind of give a recap of both routines.
I can go ahead and start with Alamo. So Alamo, right after they were done, I think we all three of us looked at each other and our jaws kind of dropped. They were extremely powerful in their set. Their set was super high energy. They performed to a very good level. Their drops were they hit very hard. And, it was just very entertaining to watch, very engaging. All their dancers, knew how to dance properly, and you could tell for sure by the way that they were dancing on stage. Starting off, they started with, I believe, a Dolly on stage. They were they were kneeling, I believe, for a little bit. That was something that I think Jagga also brought up in deliberation. We kind of wish they almost did something with more movement, maybe like walking on or kind of slowly creeping on from the sides. So that was kind of like the intro. Going into, the rest of the segments, I believe they had Kunde, Sups, Kunde, Umer, Thamal, everything had, a big drop in there. And there weren't really many actual critiques that I had in terms of, execution, because I think we all decided that they were the best energy in terms. So they were the best in terms of energy. They were killing it on all ends. Every single segment had a drop, and they were hitting it with full force. And that just made it so much more impactful. That made it, the energy really just hit it home for us. And at the end of the day, the rubric, we really had to sit down with the rubric and kind of look at where most of the points were, geared towards that first place team, and set design was 10 points above that execution level, where I believe energy was placed in that section. So that was really, where most of the debate was coming from. But, points wise, if I'm just talking about Alamo, I really, really enjoyed their set, but, they did fall they did fall short from Fudge in terms of creativity, in terms of their choreo, but mostly for me in terms of their mechanisms within the formations that they did. And Umer, you can talk more about Fudge and kind of like the aspects and mechanisms that they were able to present.
Yeah, so I do want to say this. Like this has been said by like multiple judges on different podcasts, but like just because your favorite performance is not win, your favorite performance does not always win the competition. Alamo was my favorite performance. I told Fudge that. I told Alamo that. Um, I think what really just like what made them lose the competition was the rubric and the wording of the rubric. So to kind of go into like what Fudge had, like I'm Sid, you and I have both like have talked about Fudge sets in the past and how like there's a lot of like weird stuff going on. Like sometimes it's like a lot of like weird, cool little golf clap ideas, but they all kind of like mishmash in each other, and they don't always like sing for back a term. Like they don't really stick out and stand out. But at this performance, I really think Fudge had a really nice balance of like they let every single idea, like they pointed a lot of attention on every single little idea, and it was very easy to digest the first time around, and it was not crowded with all the other ideas. When there was an interesting formation, the only thing that you were focusing on was the interesting formation. When they had a cool choreo variation that like complemented the mix, the only thing that was going on was the choreo variation that complemented the mix. When they had like a really cool drop, they would do it in place, and the only thing you were focusing on was the drop, not the formation, not everything else. Every single idea was given space to breathe, and I could like intake it and write it down. Like I had many more things written down for Fudge than I did for Alamo. Even though like Alamo's drops hit harder, they did, absolutely did, but that's not what's on the rubric. What's on the rubric is what were the creative, innovative, fresh, unique ideas? Which team was more, and that's what happened. Like yeah, Alamo's drops hit harder. Like I had like you look at my thing intro outro. I had them higher, but it's only 5 points. Like overall impact, like I think I had them the same, if not Alamo a little higher. Like that's only 10 points, but like 15 points for creative formations, 15 points for creative choreography. Like I can't tell you how many times I was like when I was on FCB, my big role was like making formations. I loved all the like when they had like 4 corners going into 2 lines, going into an X, going to 2 lines again, and then going out of it. Like it was really like intricate formations that I can tell took a lot of practice in order to get everybody synced up like that. It was really interesting to watch. During the Umer segment, the musicality was really interesting. They did this thing where a tumbi was playing, and they had like their hand flick, and then when the dud was playing, they did like tuppies to the dud. Like I could tell that they were thinking really deeply about the music, what they were doing, and like everything that was complementing that. Yeah, again, I'll easily say this. I told them their shit get drop, it kind of came and went. Their ending kind of came and went. Like, did it hit hard? Not so much. But were the ideas there? Absolutely. Were the formations there? Absolutely. And I think that's where they got their points. Like, and I know this is one question that we got, and I can speak onto this a little bit. One of the big things that when it came to Fudge versus Alamo, there's some confusion about why Fudge had the same energy and energy score as Alamo. Well, like I said earlier earlier in this podcast, energy is both energy and nakra. Fudge had better nakra. Alamo had better energy. It kind of just canceled out, and so therefore they had the same score. So do you want me to talk about Alamo too, or just Fudge? Okay. So then Alamo, like I said, they had really, it was an amazing performance. Like it was honestly the only team that like really like I was like, oh shit, this is like getting my like blood pumping. I was really excited to watch it. It was very enjoyable to watch. One thing I really wanted to call out is their drummer segment is that like there are a lot of teams that have like really like cheesy Jody interactions. Like last pod with for Blowout, I'll compare to CMU. Like they had like very like, for lack of a better term, like uncreative, just like typical like cutesy little Jody interactions. But like I really liked how they did it, how Alamo did it. Like it was, I don't want to say like innovative like Jody interaction, but like it was good. Like it wasn't like panned and cheesy and like so like clearly staged. It felt genuine, and I really, really liked it. They had some cool formations here and there. During their Fomania, they had this like arrow formation that transitioned across stage that I really liked. And again, their drops hit hard. Their energy was great. Their execution was far superior to Fudge, but like that's not where this rubric's heavy points are. Like those are all 10-point sections. Fudge's gonna beat you on those 15-point sections. Yeah, like end of the day, like listen, this was a creativity-based rubric, not an impact-based rubric, not an overall impression-based rubric, not an execution-based rubric. Creativity. Were the ideas more creative? Who had more creative ideas? Fudge did. I think anybody watching this, like, and looking at the ideas, not the impact, not how it made you feel, the ideas. Fudge had those. Fudge had more of those. Like, I don't really think that's debatable. And if you think about that and look at the rubric and how much those sections are weighed, I think you'll understand why Fudge won this competition.
Thank you, Umer. Go ahead, Jagga.
So basically, kind of a lot of the points have been hit. I kind of want to go when we were making this rubric. One question that I asked the comp board was, "Are you guys going for a modern or a folk comp, or like what kind of comp you guys are going for?" Their answer was they're heavily focused on creativity / gimmick, or like modern type, like a semi-modern comp. So that kind of plays a big factor into the rubric. The rubric was heavily weighting creativity. And the way that I scored Alamo was I kind of looked at the set how they executed it. They from start to finish, they were going hard. They're like, you could tell all the dancers wanted that set, that like they were there for that set, for that placing. And to me, it was like, yes, this team brought it on. And if you look at the points, my points there were only like 2 points difference between Fudge and Alamo, with Fudge having a deduction of 2 points because of it, the malfunction. But when I saw Elmo dancing, like Sharnie and Umer has said, they had like a lot of like execution was like far better than any other team. Their set was hard hitting. But I told them in our deliberation too that I can be easily swayed into putting Fudge up because of the creativity. Fudge definitely had creative parts to their set. And like, I'm pretty sure we all wrote this. There was a part where I think Umer kind of pointed out there was like a wink part that they did. They basically played their choreo to the mix. They kind of had ideas that are outside of the box that you haven't seen. So this set and like, I guess in better words, the set was a lot more digestible watching live, and it was different. It was something that it catered to the rubric. So that's why Fudge kind of took it over in from Elmo at that point. But if this rubric was based on execution and like just energy and stuff, I'm pretty sure Elmo would have won that competition. But just because of the creativity part, Fudge took it.
So I was talking to a lot of people at the after party and talked to a lot of people after the competition, and everybody was very surprised. Like, how did Alamo not win? How did Alamo not win? One person brought up is like, was Fudge's choreography really that creative, really that innovative, really that unique? I'd argue yes. Some people said, well, we've seen that from Fudge before, but I'm not comparing Fudge to Fudge in the past. I'm comparing Fudge to the rest of the teams at this competition. And yeah, like Fudge's approach to choreography, creativity, choreography and formations was vastly different from everybody else at this competition. Their creativity was unique and innovative in comparison to every single other team at this competition. I would argue that Alamo had really cool ideas. They had really cool formations, but it was similar to the other teams at this competition. And I think that's also something everybody has to keep in mind. It's like, you have to compare to the teams at the comp, not to like creativity as a whole and like.
And I think just kind of going off of that, I was at the edge of my seat for Alamo because of their energy and the hard hits that they were, executing with their drops. But I was also at the edge of my seat for Fudge with all the crazy mechanisms that they were doing with their choreo and their formations, which is why, as a person, us two decided that Alamo was our favorite set. As a person, I thought it was the best set, but then, you have to look at it as a judge. We have to make sure that, you know, we're abiding to the rubric. We have 10 extra points on the set design part. And, you know, I was at the edge of my seat for Fudge because of their creativity. The mechanisms that they were doing were so seamless. They were so fluid. It almost seemed like robotic, but so fluid at the same time. It was very interesting to watch everything play out. And, you know, like Umer was saying before, everything had, you know, a reason to it. There was a purpose to everything. And it was something that didn't take very long for us three to understand. It was pretty apparent. And, you know, just looking back at the rubric, it's those 10 points that are weighted higher in the set design part is really where those points for Fudge came from.
Was there any specific point that you guys kind of hung on, questioning, you know, if you needed to flip Alamo and Fudge? Was there anything specific? I mean, I know you guys covered like the overall, right? But in your conversations, right, was there a specific point that, you know what, kind of like made you hesitate? You know, maybe we should, like, because, you know, the conversation is, you know, Fudge is first in points. Like, we have to have a reason to flip it, right? Was there something that hung there that said, you know what, maybe we should? Or was it just, you know what, you know, it's clear that this is how it is? Like, it's not like you have to have the conversation. You have a 10-minute conversation to make sure everybody's on the same page. We're all thinking about this correctly, right? But was there something that, you know, made you guys kind of say, wait a minute, let's really talk about flipping Alamo?
Yeah, so like when we were comparing scores, I had Elmo first, and when we discussed, and I'm pretty sure it's in the deliberation recording, I said I saw Elmo's set as better executed from start to end, and better, like far better energy from Elmo. But the way we looked at it was what's being heavily weighted on the rubric. And both Sharnie and Umer had Fudge winning because of the rubric creativity part. So it wasn't like we talked about it. Yes, we spent, I think, about at least 7 to 10 minutes on that discussion. But at the end of the day, the rubric said creativity. So it wasn't that hard to kind of sway us towards that direction.
Yeah, I think overall it wasn't really like any specific moments that was like I think Alamo should get it. And like I think that kind of goes back into like how the rubric said it. It's like, what are the creative moments that you're like, it's like essentially creativity, like all those things are gonna like speak out to you, like, oh, I remember this and 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 all these like little things. Alamo really gave us a really strong feeling and made us like remember like really hitting certain drops, but it wasn't the fact that the drops were insanely creative. It was because they hit really hard, and that's like more so with their dancing. Like, don't get me wrong, there were a lot of cool stuff they did, especially their jaw, like everybody turns off and then turns back on, hits the drops. A lot of cool stuff like that. But again, looking at the rubric, creative moment, like those creative, like intricate creativity and things like that. Like Fudge had more ideas.
That is great. Thank you guys for all that. Do you guys have any other, actually, before I ask that question, we're now moving on to listener questions. One question that came up, does adding English songs affect the grading of teams in any way?
Yeah, I give them more points. Nah, man.
See, yeah, it doesn't matter as long as the choreo fits well to the music. It's not taking away from your performance. You can use English songs. It's fine.
Listen, DDR danced to K-pop earlier this season. I loved it. It was great. The more like different music you get in, the more like interesting your mix becomes. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, listen, if you're at a folk comp, like if you're at MCB, like, yeah, sure, that's gonna hurt you. Like this comp, that's not gonna hurt you. Depends on the rubric, depends on the competition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that the question came from, but I would say that yeah, I kind of want to speak on it. Just general statement, if I may. That is like what you dance to, your mix. You want your dancers to connect to it, right? So if your dancers are going to get hype with a Drake lyric in there, throw it in there, right? If your dancers aren't going to get hyped by it, then don't throw it in there, right? But it allows the dancers to connect more to it. So do it, right? Don't deprive your dancers of stuff like that, right? And then, back whenever I was a captain, the guys would come to me with like, you got to listen to this song and put this beat in the mix. It's like, I can't just force something, but if that's going to get them up and have that little extra bit of, balance and lechuk and that wanting to be there, like that's a boost to your team. So, as Umer said, if I do remember, and Jagga, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Gary put that in the rubric for Motor City, like no English lyrics. Otherwise, it's like automatic deductions. That's something that I do remember hearing about. So it does. For that, you shouldn't do it. But if it gets your team going, like we've seen it in almost every team. Drake lyric making it in there. I'm sure all the Detroit teams have used Eminem at some point. It's like a way to connect to you and your people and your team, right? So. Don't put a leash on that for no reason. It's kind of where I'm going with that.
Listen, so I'm gonna go to MCP and put like Latin music in my mix and be like, it's not English.
You'll do tech time and then it'll kick you out. You won't even leave. Anyway, so any other highlights you guys want to kind of give shout outs to? Any teams, any dancers, any choreo ideas, segments, something that you guys want to shout out as highlights?
I really like. I'll go for it.
Sorry, I want to give a shout out to Forge.
So
Their
good.
shade was like, oh my god! It was like, yeah. It started the performance with they started with the shade, and that kind of shook you. It like the way it was spoken, the way like it ended. It was great. It was like the best, I guess, the best shade for the night.
I love Boiler's performance. I loved it. It was so good. Like it's really cool to see like a relatively younger team like just like bring it with the ideas. Like I want everybody to go watch the performance. I think it'll be up. It'll be up by the time this podcast comes out. Go watch the performance. Like the Railgadi segment, so good. The Fumania Fulcari segment. I was like, oh, I haven't seen like not props used in a really long time. For like better terms, like they use like something really cool, and they didn't just like bring it out and just like flail it around everywhere. Like they like did it, incorporated into the choreography, and I was like, well, I haven't seen anything like that in like a minute. So it was really, really cool, and I really want to make sure that they know that. Like,
actually, one thing I will say is just for the comp as a whole, very impressive the way the board handled the whole show. It was very efficient. I believe we ended at like 8:30 maybe the show. Ended judges meeting at like 10:30. So everything was super efficient. Teams were going, they ended, the next team would be ready to go. So it was very, very efficient, and this was their first time running the comp. So it was really well organized and planned out. Very seamless, I would say. Yeah.
The comp, like I don't understand why like any competition with like 8 teams and like 2 exhibition acts lasts longer than 2.5 hours. Like that shouldn't happen. And so this comp was just like, nah, everything's here. We're getting you out of here. Everybody's out. I was like, I have never been to a competition where I'm like relaxing with all my friends after the judge meetings are all over and just like having a good time, and then I go to the after party and I just like enjoy the entire experience. Like I've never had that, so this was really, really nice.
Yeah,
really want to shout out.
They did not do the sponsor shout outs.
Really good.
It was like teams after teams. It was good. They kept it going. The props to them though. They I heard that they were all sponsor ran comp. It wasn't affiliated with a school, so props to them being such a young team running this comp. They did a great job.
Yeah, it's great to hear that that it was really well ran. You guys had a great time. You guys love the committee. They got stuff done on time. I hope that more teams apply next year, right? And they grow as a comp. But given the fact that you guys have run from me to the DSP committee, fact that you guys run a sick comp first year, there's no reason why teams should not apply, next year. So
I think
hopefully you guys get a lot more apps next year.
I think one thing to think about for teams that are competing next year and are going to Bruin, I think this is a great place. This is a great staging ground. This is a great place. I know FOD. Can I say this? I'm gonna say this, and then I'll ask them if the lineup comes out, then I'll keep it in. But Fodge and Alamo City are both going to Bruin. They both were here. They both got a chance to test out their set and get feedback from judges and test everything out. I think this is a great comp for anybody thinking about going to Bruin and testing out ideas. So I say I really think this comp should be better attended and be a bit more hype next year for sure.
Sweet. And with that, thank you for listening to another episode of the Bhangra Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with someone who you think would get great value out of listening to the podcast. Please subscribe to our email list, join the Discord, do all that good stuff to make Umer happy, and subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen. Go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, make a comment. That would, again, make Umer feel really good about himself. So with that, thank you very much and have a great evening.